Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our third session of the day. You are currently seeing a very popular and world-renowned lady, Miss Magatte Wade. Magatte is Senegalese born, and she has gone from strength to strength. Um, she is the director of the Center for African Prosperity at Atlas Network, the leading organization of African free market think tanks. She was listed as Forbes' 20 youngest power women in Africa, a young global leader by the World Economic Forum, and a TED Global Africa Fellow. She has created many companies. Magatte is the best-selling author of The Heart of a Cheetah, that you can see there in the background, and the host of the Magatte Wade Show. She's spoken at the United Nations, the Aspen Institute, Harvard, Oxford, Stanford, Yale, MIT, and the TED main stage. Her work featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Guardian, the BBC, CNN, Fast Company, Fortune, and the Huffington Post. She has been on both Lex Fridman and Jordan Peterson's podcasts, where she was among the most popular guests with over 10 million views. Magatte has a passion for the role of free markets in overcoming poverty and the power of enterprise to tackle social issues and promote entrepreneurial education. She's a sought-after speaker and thought leader at major conferences, events, and universities around the world. One of the things that aggravates Magatte is African policies framed as poverty alleviation policies, as opposed to prosperity creation policies. Why aiming for a scenario where most people in Africa remain poor, with only some escaping poverty? Poverty alleviation as a policy creates a very low bar for success. A government can lift 10 people out of poverty in 20 years and consider the policy to be successful. As you all know, poverty alleviation is also a popular goal in the context of African competition policy. Among others, this is reflected in the way that we articulate merger remedies. And we asked Magatte to give input on African competition policy formulation, and it is important that we rethink how we think about competition policy. Magatte, very welcome at Betweenity's 3-day virtual conference on Africa competition regulation. It's a great honor for us to have you here with us. Can you please tell us your story and give us a little bit of insight into your journey?
Thank you. Thank you, Odie, for having me. And to everybody listening, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I absolutely love the topic of this conference. I think it's definitely part of the key issues that we Africans who want to see a prosperous Africa, we have to look into what it is that your conference is about. Because to me, that's where all the solution and all the problem is. Mm-hmm. So with that said, yeah, so my story, Odie, I was telling you, is very simple. I was born in Senegal, the west coast of Africa, obviously. And then right around age 2, my parents made the very harsh decision that so many parents before them, African parents, have made and continue making to this day. And that decision was to look at me look at the 2-year-old and realize that the best they can do to serve her is to leave her behind. And so my parents elected for the immigration journey away from home in search for a better life. So they left me behind with my grandma, in the care of my grandma, because, children need stability. If you don't know what's going to be happening on the other side, it's better just to leave me where I am so my grandma could take care of me. So that's what she did. And my parents left. They went to Europe. And the immigration journey must have worked because some 5 years later, they called back for me to be reunited with them. So at that point, I went to Germany. And the reason why I walk people through this story is because it's important. So here I am, I arrive in Germany, I'm around 7 now, and I look around and I'm thinking to myself, how come these people have this and we don't? And, Odie, for me, all I was talking about back then was just, look, back home, when grandma says, my God, it's time for your shower, I knew that I had a good 45 minutes to an hour to go play some more. Not just because I was a procrastinator, but because I knew she would have to get a stove of coal going, literally, and then put a pot of water on it, wait for it to boil. Then we put it into a bigger bucket, mix it with some cold water so it's safer temperature for my skin. Mm-hmm. And then somebody stronger than my grandma would drag the bucket to the shower area And there at last, some 45 minutes to an hour later, I can proceed to take my shower using a tiny little plastic pot, taking from the big tank back to my body, back and forth.
Mhm.
But here in Germany, mom says, "My God, it's time for your shower." And I'm like, where is the bucket of warm water? I am not getting butt naked in this weather. It's in the winter. And she's like, "Oh, come on, you're silly." And so she said, "Just jump in the shower." I jump in and I turn the knobs around. The water is coming down, and it turns out you can choose the temperature, turns out you can choose the pressure. And
Mm.
I'm just thinking that somebody is playing a really not so fun case of juju on me, literally, because it didn't make any sense. It just didn't. We didn't have running water first, let alone, like warm water and all of that stuff. And I was just like, whoa. And this difference was so striking that I could not help but just be like, how come they have this and we don't? And it was like that about everything. It was like that about the grocery stores where you had more
Mm.
types of apples or bread than my little brain could count. The paved roads, all of that. And it was just like,
Mm.
what is this life and how come we don't have it? And it literally became the defining question of my life. That's the reason why you and I are having this conversation today.
Mm.
It's because I needed to know. I needed to know. And eventually the question became, how come some countries like mine and so many others in Africa are poor, while other countries like the US, Australia, New Zealand, you name it, are rich? What's going on here? And everywhere I could hear something or see something, I would look for for the answer. So magazines, conferences, movies, conversations, anything. I'm trying to see if I can find the cues. And
Mhm.
of course, almost everybody, African, non-Africans, almost everyone has their idea as to why supposedly Africa is still the poorest region in the world. And Odie, it goes from the IQ fury. Oh, darling, it's not your fault. It's just that blacks and browns are just not the same. I heard other people say it's because of colonialism, it's because of racism, and others saying it's low IQ, others saying we're always fighting, others saying we're lazy. I've heard it all, but none of it made sense because I'll tell you the couple big ones. One is colonialism. Then I say to people, how come Ethiopia, which has never been colonized,
Mm.
yet for the longest time has been the poster child for poverty in Africa, right?
Mm.
And conversely, you have Botswana, which has been colonized, and since the independences has been one of the best performers in the continent. So
Mm.
that's not adding up. And when you want to go down to this idea that there's something intrinsically wrong with me as my IQ and or my laziness, then you tell me how is it that the moment the same people you deemed unworthy, the minute they make it to somewhere in the West, they thrive.
Mhm.
So I'm starting to look at this equation and realize that the only variable in this equation is not the people. The people are a constant. It's the place. So
Mm.
now I'm thinking to myself, what is it about these places? What is it about a country that if you're there, you thrive, or if you're there, you don't thrive? What's going on with these countries?
Yeah.
And so I went on with my life. After Germany, a couple of years in Germany, family decided we're going to stay in Europe, so we moved to France. And after France, when we went to France, after business school, I decided to move to the US because I really wanted to live this American dream, but I've been sold by the movies, right?
Yeah.
The movies sold the American dream. So I arrived in America and I looked around me and it was just a fascinating journey. And I was actually doing extremely well for myself. But Odie, one day
Yeah.
I had very much I cannot call it anything else than an existential, crisis. This one day I was driving down, in Big Sur, one of the most beautiful places in the world, and I remember, feeling so much a moment of joy, a moment of appreciation, a moment of gratitude with a big G for God and for all the people He's brought into my life, that helped me accomplish my American dream, right?
Mm.
And but at the height of that feeling of exhilaration, happened to me what always happens to me in those moments. It's like somebody flips a switch in my head and everything goes dark. And with the darkness,
Mm.
pain, real heavy pain starts to descend upon me. It's as if the sky was closing in on me, just to tell you how heavy and painful that is. And what it is, it's just because in those moments, whenever I have these profound moments of joy and gratitude for the life of abundance that I'm
Mm.
afforded in the US, I could not help, almost at the very same time, I could never help but think about those that were left behind in a life of scarcity.
Yeah.
And in this case, for me, it is all of these stories of people, real human beings, some of them being friends or friends of family. These are not strangers. It's these stories from the moment I remember being a human being. So,
Yeah.
meaning very early on, you have these stories of people packing themselves into little fishermen's boats, trying to cross to Europe in search for a job. The boat capsizes, they're dead at the bottom of the ocean. And or it's like a body drops from an airplane somewhere above England because somebody thought it would be a good idea to hide in the landing gear of a plane. Or they open the cargo section in Charles de Gaulle in Paris and in Paris, and they realize there's a frozen dead body because somebody hid in there to
Mm.
make it to Europe. And when people think that air route is too dangerous, sea route is too dangerous, they go land route. But land route, many times people get caught in Libya, and there we're sold as slaves. My cost precisely is between $300 and $500. All these people are doing is trying to escape their conditions where there is no jobs to a place that has jobs so they too can feed their families left back home. And so, this is at the end of the day, when you ask me what is my story, this is my story. I'm truly a haunted person. I'm haunted. I'm haunted by this misery. I'm haunted by what the state of poverty of our continent is doing to our people and the risk is making them take. This is, I am no one to judge them. I'm not going to judge anybody.
Mhm.
I feel fortunate that my parents were able to migrate under safe circumstances, that
Mm.
they made it, and eventually I'm a proud result of that. So, but the point is, I, so that day when I was driving and that feeling came up to me, I usually, whenever I would feel that way, I knew very quickly I had a coping mechanism. And my coping mechanism was, listen, this problem has been here so long before your arrival. And sadly, it might be here probably for a very long time after you're gone. So
Yeah.
perhaps instead of trying to change everybody's life, perhaps see if you can manage to build a good, healthy, productive lives yourself.
Yeah.
And that shall be enough. And everybody should try to do the same. It shall be enough. But that day, that trick was not working. It just was not letting go. And I could literally feel my mind splitting from my body. The mind was trying to tell itself whatever it wanted. The body was not having any of it because I was literally shaking to the point I almost had this accident because I was jerking around the steering wheel.
Mm.
And Odie, they say that the mind has an inordinate ability to make sense of pretty much anything. That's why you have these people, the Nazis, for example, who do what they do and still, with a straight face, can
Mm.
justify it to themselves and to others. But they say the body doesn't do that. The body is very honest. The body just doesn't. And so that day, I think there was a split between the two, and my body won. And so I stopped the car as soon as I could, got out of that car, and literally physically, I fell to my knees because there was nothing left in my body. There's just nothing and nothing. And so I fell to my knees. And at the same time, the one thing that made sense, the one feeling that made sense was to surrender. I'm like, surrender quickly. And I said, God, okay, this is it. From here on, everything, every breath that you're going to give me, I want to put it towards the benefit of Africa. And it was very
Yeah.
clear for me. It was very clear for me. I want to devote anything you give me, life, friendship, anything, I want to devote it to the betterness of this continent. And I'm talking about prosperity, nothing else. Because with the prosperity is going to come the dignity. I just know that.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
as soon as I said that, it's just so amazing the feeling of peace that came upon me. I got back in my car and I drove away, and in my hearts of hearts, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again, ever. And
Yeah.
indeed, it never be, everything changed from there on. A
Yes.
few, a few months later, I took my husband of back then to Senegal to see where I came from because he was French from Normandy. And Emmanuel and I, we went. And we realized that this hibiscus drink that I grew up with, you couldn't find it anymore or anything because the women who were growing the hibiscus, there was no more outlet for the hibiscus because everybody's drinking soda pop, Western soda pop brands or knockoff
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
So I got upset by that because these women, not only a part of my culture was disappearing, but these women were also losing their livelihood. So what I did with armed with this mantra of criticize by creating, my father always would say, don't come to me with your problems alone. You can talk to me about your problem only if you have alternatives to propose.
Sure.
Because my father always wanted to make sure that we're in solutions mode and not just in complaint mode, because that mode you
Sure.
lose yourself in, it's not productive, nothing good happens from that place.
Yes.
So what I did is I built a company. I built a brand that basically the products were going to be these juices that I mourned, that I wanted to bring back.
Yes.
And we were going to hire all of these women back. And at the height of it, we had 9,000 women that we put back to work.
Sure.
With
Yeah.
the so that's what we did. And so, but you know what, Odie, when I did that, when I built that first business, do you remember that question that I told you that the little 7-year-old had? How come we're poor and how come our countries are poor and others are not? Well, when I built that first company, we had a sister company in the US, a sister company in Senegal, doing different things, right?
Yeah.
And I was shocked. I was shocked at the discrepancy of the ease of doing business. I mean, on one side, in the US, it took back then, we're talking even, it's not like you could just register it online or anything, but even back then it was super quick,
Yeah.
less than half a day. And you registered your business legally. You paid maybe a couple $100, probably even less back in those days, and
Yeah.
you were done. Compare that to a Senegalese entity. In those days, we're in 2003, 2004, it took us almost 2 years by the time we finished legally
Yeah.
registering this darn business.
2
And I won't even
years.
go. Yeah. And then the labor laws. The labor laws are such that in Senegal, the Senegalese employees are among the most protected employees in the world on paper, meaning legally. If you really want to follow the law,
Yeah.
they're among the most protected, employees in the world. And you know what it translates to in reality? My country is one of the 25 poorest countries in the world, super, super high unemployment.
That's yeah.
The labor laws, basically, you're married to your employees for good or for bad. The state gets to decide when and how you can hire an employee, and also when and if you can get rid of them.
Sure. Yes, I see. Yeah.
And those are just little details like that. And then the tax code. The tax code is so complicated, it's worth truckloads of laws and regulations. What does it mean? I am going to make mistakes, not
Mhm.
because I'm a bad person or I'm conniving or trying to do something. No, because it comes it comes with the territory. The more something is complicated, the more rules you have, one has to obey, and the more prone you are to make errors. It's just the way it works.
Correct.
And so what does it mean? It means we all have to hire a CPA, which raises the cost of doing business. And even these experts tell you, but don't fool yourself. We too are going to make mistakes because this thing is too complicated. So you're basically doing business, but you're probably committing 3 felonies a day, like they say in the US.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
And that it's just
Mhm.
up to them and whenever they want to, meaning if you say something they don't like, the government, or you become big enough or whatever, and then they'll come and look for problems, hoping that you pay them a bribe for
Yeah.
them to go away.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
All of these things, and I'm comparing this to the U.S., and I'm just like, wow. The in Senegal, the state tells me who I get to hire, how it works, everything. In the U.S., employment at will. If the employee or the employer decides we're not working together anymore for whatever reason it is, usually there's a 2 weeks notice, and usually in the US, you just pay the money. The person can leave that same afternoon or whatever, and you're done. You move on with life. You have this
Mhm.
flexibility of employment. And so it's just, and you look at the tax code, like compared to some place like the Texas, where under a very big threshold, you don't even bother. You file. The filing takes you a few minutes online, and usually you owe them nothing if you're especially under a threshold, but still pretty high.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, this is insane. This discrepancy in what I then call the ease of doing business was just making no sense in between the two countries. And then my first reaction was, oh, I guess it's because they're poor. I guess it's because we're poor that everything is so cumbersome. And on the opposite, it's because America is rich that everything is so easy. But the minute you say that, Odie, you stop for a second and you say, wait a second.
Mhm.
You're poor because you don't have enough money. You don't have enough money because you don't have a source of income.
Mhm.
A source of income, and see that one. After this, I promise you, and anybody listening, go out there and ask people why people are poor. They're going to say, oh, because we don't have enough education. Oh, it's because this. Oh, it's because that. Oh, but no one is going to say people are poor because they don't have a source of income. See, that dot is oftentimes forgotten.
That's interesting.
Yes, but if you do say people are poor because they don't have a source of income, then you ask, what is the source of income for most of us? It's a job, isn't it? Where do jobs come from?
Yeah.
From the private sector, businesses.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
sometimes when I give lectures at schools here in the US, wherever, any of these fancy universities, then I ask and the students are like, well, government also can give jobs in the nonprofit world too. And I say, fine. But even if you're working at a government, I would like to think that you're being paid. I don't think you're going there and just working and going home with nothing.
Exactly.
You're being paid, right? And I said, well, that money, where does it come from? It comes from the private sector. It comes from these businesses.
Taxes. Yeah.
People, us paying, employers and employees both are like paying taxes. That taxes gets pooled, and then we pay our public servants with it. And nonprofits, same thing. The nonprofits,
Exactly.
it's surplus money that usually come from the private sector, from both people who are working and also companies, and we have a surplus and we decide to give it to a cause that we care about. So everything takes us back to the private sector.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, so let's go back. You're poor because you don't have enough money to take care of your basic needs. You don't have money because you don't have a source of income. What is a source of income for most of us? It's a job. Where do jobs come from? The private sector. Now, shouldn't we pause and ask, what does the private sector, aka businesses, need? Businesses don't happen in a vacuum. They need a friendly business environment. They need an understanding business environment.
Yes.
But wait a second. You just told me that Senegal, as well as almost all the other sub-Saharan African nations, are the ones with the worst business environments in the world, as measured by all economic freedom indexes in the world that measure how easy or hard is it to start and run a business anywhere in the world. When I did that and I discovered that, poverty, that the business environment is the worst in Africa, then I had my answer to my little girl's question.
Yeah.
Africa, the poorest region in the world, because it happens to be the most overregulated region in the world. So that's what my story is.
Magatte, thank you so much for that. And I'd like to take that back to a fascinating story that you're sharing in your book. You said that for hundreds of years, a millennium or more, Africa was prosperous, as wealthy as any land in the world in those days. We had our own trade routes, no less rich than the Silk Road or the Spice Route. Timbuktu and Aksum were magnificent trade centers. Can you please share a little bit of those insights? Because it's fascinating to see this contrast between what you're describing at the moment and what you have discussed then.
Yes. And thank you, Odie, for that passage, because it's one of my favorites too. Now, to go to your point you're making, to go to the point that you're making, Odie, yes, I think most people, Africans, non-Africans, doesn't matter. Most people, when I think we don't realize that when we think about Africans and we think about the history of Africans, I believe that consciously or not, for most people, the story of Africa starts with colonialism. Many people don't go back to what before. It's almost as if there was nothing before, and all of a sudden colonization happens, slavery and colonization, and then to present day. No one spends time on who were we, what were we doing, what was going on. Almost no one. But the truth is, when you go back and you look, you see those things I talked to you about. You see places like in a Great Zimbabwe, it is known that they had circular structures made of stones in times when, whoever did that for that time was at the height of engineering and craftsmanship. Whoever built this was among some of the most advanced people. And it's because of that when the colonizer actually arrived in that part of Africa, they were convinced that no blacks could have built this. But yes, thank you very much, we did. So it's just like that about everything. These trade routes that I tell you about, we had very thriving, trade routes. And when you arrive to a trade place, what would happen is automatically there was a system of being able to set up very quickly an insurance system so that your sale, what you're buying and selling could be protected, just like you have buyers protected with PayPal. we had just really fascinating stuff going on. So for this, anybody who is interested in this, I have specifically a few people that I could refer you back to, but two of them really stand out. One is the work of George Aite, my beloved Professor George Aite, Ghanaian economist. I mean, George really he's the one who really spent a lot of his research work going into that time of our existence and connecting all of these dots. And then much younger, you have now the work of a young person called Isaac. I would have to get his last name, but I'll send it to you, Odie, so you can share with your
people.
with your audience.
Yes.
And Isaac is a young researcher who is spending time on history as well, but connecting these dots and showcasing very much, the Africa that we don't think about.
Yes.
And so, and he's a very rigorous researcher, and it's amazing the stuff that he comes up with. And
Yes.
He's a Substack, he's a Twitter, all of that. I mean, he's a brilliant researcher because Isaac will really, through him, you'll get to understand this very rich tapestry and sophistication of the various African peoples from back in the days, and all the stuff that was happening with us, some of the castles that were happening in Ethiopia, some of the technologies that they were having. People like to talk about currencies, but like how we had very sophisticated ways of approaching currency and, I'm losing my word here. It's going to come back. But like how it has to be a good store of value. That's the term I was looking for.
Yeah.
Like how we're thinking about store of value for a good currency. Like there is so much good thinking going on.
Yeah.
And in any case, so start with this too, and you will be fascinated. But bottom line is, at the end of the day, what George found out, especially him, he worked mostly on George worked mostly on the what do you call it? George worked mostly on the governance structures, the various ones that were in Africa, and he's the one who shows you that basically no chief would ever dare to tell anybody how much profit they could make, unlike the Marxist socialists have brought to our shores through the colonial days. And so that's how I would answer that one, Odie.
Yes.
People really have to go back and study that time of our history. And then when you look there, you realize that Africans were highly entrepreneurial, very much free enterprise, and definitely were practicing the free markets. People were free. We were free. If you're not happy with a chief, you leave. You leave to join another one, or you leave to go form another one, but you don't stay. And we were always able to vote with our feet. That's another concept that we had back in the days. That when the colonizers came, they said to be civilized is to have a centralized government. It's to vote every so often. Blah blah blah. Where us, we always had the power of exit at any given moment in time. And that to me, true freedom. You cannot have freedom if you don't have an exit option. And for an exit option to be valid, it has to be an exit that you can do quickly and that doesn't have to cost you too much. And so that's a whole nother conversation, but I just think people yet have to discover how fascinating, things were back in the days.
Yes, that's right. And now I'm wondering, if we look at that entrepreneurial brilliance that we had back in the days, how did it happen that Africa became so reliant on aid?
Yes, very good question. So what happened is, back in the days, we were doing, like I said, we were being free marketeers and practicing the free enterprise. Eventually, what happened, we had our moments of slavery as well. And there, what I want to remind people is that slavery is something that humans have been practicing from almost the beginnings of times. That's just something we've all been doing until we learned that it was a terrible thing to do to each other, right? But there too, Black people tend to want to think, Africans, that we've been the only, what do you call it? We've been the only people who have been ever enslaved, right? And also thinking that was happening because of our skin color. No, Here, we have to be real, all of us, and go back and learn the history of mankind. History of mankind is people capturing each other for as long as we can remember, and we stopped at some point when we became more enlightened. So slave trade was just that, trade. Terrible trade, if you ask me. Terrible. Amoral, immoral. I don't have enough harsh words, but it was a trade. And we partook in it as well. And eventually, we then moved into colonialism, which is different from slavery. And so towards the end of colonialism, the colonial era, what was happening is, people have to remember, as we were coming towards the end of colonialism in the late 50s, early 60s, what was going on, for those who don't remember the history, is that we were at the height of this ideological battle, represented on one end by the Western world, promoting freedom and practicing capitalism as its economic system, facing off with the East, the Eastern Bloc, and those guys promoting various forms of statism, right? And so these two blocks facing off. But what people have to remember is, in those times, those two blocks were looking for influence, looking down south. And we were part of it. So they said, so the Africans of the time, and the African liberators of the time, the African, people like, Jomo Kenyatta, the people of that time, they were looking at it and they're thinking to themselves, look, you, the West, are the ones who colonized us, and you've done all of these terrible things to us. And so surely whatever you're going to be promoting, we're not going to go for it based on that alone. And on top of that, you had, so that was one thing. So here you had, we definitely had our beef with the West because of what happened during colonialism. So definitely you could imagine, emotionally speaking, where these people were coming from. Number two, we were at an era in time when any so-called respectable intellectual believed that Marxism was the way. But Marxism was the way, and not capitalism. It was very much a consensus among the intellectuals. Number two, so that influence counted for something. Number three, many people don't know this, but it's been the Marxist socialists of the time who have been fighting for racial equality in times when there was no racial equality, although Marx himself was a known racist. So when you put those three things together, what did we do? At one of the most critical times of our history, we're about to become free. We're about to enter the independences, right? And we chose to go the Marxist route. And you and I already know that when you go the Marxist route, you're going to have absolutely nothing to show for in the ways of economic development. You're going to be poor. You're going to breed poverty, misery, and death. That's what Marxism has ever produced anywhere it's been tried. But sadly, in the most tragic circumstances of history, we Africans chose that fork at that road. And we have never looked back or reevaluated our choice of back then. So some 60 plus years later, after our independences, here we are, remaining the poorest country in the world. So in that process, the rest of the world looks at it and thinks, oh, gee, isn't it terrible? Oh my God, we've got to do something. Well, the best something that the Western world, but the rich nations came up with, which happened to also coincide with the Western world, they said, okay, we're going to send them aid. Foreign aid. Foreign aid is government-to-government aid. We're going to send them aid. We're going to basically provide them for what they lack. But Odie, what happens there? What happens there is, hey, wait, our leaders are finding that, oh, free money? Yeah, let me go buy chateaus in the south of France, entertain my I don't know, my fourth wife and 10th girlfriend and who knows what, all of the nonsense. And so here our leaders are finding that, wow, I can take this money to line my pocket. The donor nations who gave this money are realizing to themselves, oh, wow, he who holds the gold makes the rules. So they also are realizing that them being in the position of being the donor countries puts them in a position of power. So we're not talking about neo-colonialism, right? Meanwhile, you have a bunch of Africans, ordinary Africans, who the only dynamic that they know from, their countries to others is this relationship of recipient to recipient, donor, donee, the person who's donating and the person who's the recipient of the aid. And then with that, what are they learning? They're learning dependency.
Yeah.
Dependency, which we just talked about entrepreneurship being the solution to our problems.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurs are the opposite of dependent mindset people.
Yeah.
So you see, so that's how we got there. We got there because we embraced the wrong ideology at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
So started our journey, our independent journey, on the wrong foot when it comes to the economic route we took. We chose Marxism for the most part. And even those few nations, those few nations say, oh, we were not socialist Marxists. No. Yeah, you may have been, we're capitalists. Well, what type of capitalist are you that's still practicing the 5-year labor, the 5-year plan a la Soviet, right? That's not, there's a spectrum for everything. And you might tell me that you're capitalist, but you barely have gotten out of Marxism, And so most of our nations were in this situation. So so that's how we got to where we are. Made the wrong choice at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
Never reconsidered our premise. We remain poor because we took the wrong system, the wrong economic system, and we've never questioned it. And the world seeing us remaining poor because we're not doing what we should be doing, the world says, give them aid, and aid comes and causes all types of dependency problems. And with that, also us, resentment is building. Our young people are looking around and keep on thinking that it's all types of other culprits that's causing us to be poor. And in addition, especially mainstream, does not talk about the real diagnosis as to why Africa is still the poorest region in the world. When you ask people why we're still poor, they go back to the reasons I told you about when I was wondering myself why we were poor. But if you were to line up 100 people, Odie, Africans, non-Africans, do this exercise. People listening to us, do this exercise. Just give yourself some fun. Line up as many people as you want and ask them, why is Africa poor? None of them will tell you Africa is the poorest region in the world because it happens to be the most overregulated region in the world. It is the poorest region in the world because that's where the entrepreneurs are the least free to enterprise. And we all know that the entrepreneurs are the value creators, AKA wealth creators. No one, Odie, will say that, will respond that to you. You'll hear it all. You'll hear colonialism, you'll hear racism, you'll hear slavery, you'll hear the stealing of natural resources, you'll hear laziness, you'll hear IQ. I promise you will hear everything and the craziest thing. But you will not hear that answer. But as long as we don't hear that answer, we will remain poor. Because if you don't have a proper diagnosis to a problem, you are bound to not solve it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Magatte. We are in an interesting situation currently in Africa where we try to bring back the prosperity, and we do that through various kinds of conditions, through mergers, especially. And the question is, the way in which we try to do that, is that helping or is that hindering? In South Africa, we have the very particular history of apartheid, for example. And what always hinders me a little bit regarding the conditions that we impose in mergers is the issue of, is this not patronizing? Because I listen to you and I hear what you say about entrepreneurial brilliance that was there. And are we not developing a psyche that basically says, if you look at some of the conditions, for example, ownership conditions, aren't you implying by requiring that type of merger conditions that HDPs, historically disadvantaged people, cannot really bring something unique? They have to take something from an established firm. So to which extent do we deal with measures to try to make bring back entrepreneurial spirit? Is it something that you can bring back through remedies, or is it patronizing to do that? And maybe I must just quickly explain some of the other conditions. For example, if we look at conditions where we demand merged entities to procure from SMEs that are owned by HDPs, to which extent do we make it sound as if that particular SME cannot grow a customer base on its own, and that it must basically be forced into an existing supply chain, which means you are reducing the number, you are increasing the number of small players in that market, and you actually make it more difficult for that player to perform in the market. To which extent is that patronizing? Do you think there must be that amount of help?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, anytime somebody is saying to anybody else that Odie, in order for Magatte to win, we have to give her crutches, we have to give her a little pedestal to stand on, because that's the only way that Magatte can measure up to Odie. You're telling me you're telling me very clearly that you have determined that I am weaker than Audie somehow, that I am not as strong as Audie somehow, and that's why I need these props from you. So yes, it is patronizing, because you're pretty much telling me that I'm inferior to Odie. You determine that there is definitely a place that Odie is better than me somehow. And they will say, no, we're not saying that Odie is better than you. We're just saying that Odie has more than you. Well, how did Odie get more? And I know that in this situation, they're going to say, oh, it's because of apartheid and all of those things. But again, what some of us do know, we know many people who have had wealth, and their wealth that was created by their families, however they got it, it's irrelevant, because oftentimes, the money, they say by the third generation, the money is out anyway. If you're not doing anything with it, it's going to be going out of a window, right? So let's say you come from a wealthy family, and let's say your family stole all this money. Let's just say that. And I'm not saying that, but they just stole this money. You had this start. But let's say your third generation. We do know that oftentimes by the third generation, unless the person who inherited that money is hardworking, being smart, and knowing what to do with it, usually the money is out the window. Doesn't matter how it got here in the first place. So what we do know is, and also conversely, people who were born in abject poverty, right, with some of the worst conditions, doesn't even know where mom is, never was able to say dad to anybody. Some of the worst adversarial circumstances, sometimes illness is thrown in there, sometimes substance abuse was thrown in there. But you know what? This person somehow along the way, pulled up their what do you call it, church, whatever, and they made it. So this is what we have to remember, Odie. No matter where you come from, or no matter what happens to you, good or bad, you're responsible for what you do for you going forward. And from that standpoint, we also have to stop being so darn obsessed with the concept of equality. Equality is nonsense. The only type of equality we should pay attention to is equal access to opportunity. There are 8 billion people in this world. None of us is the same as the other. None. Each have our pluses, each have our minuses, and they're different, thank God. Okay? And I am sure, Odie, your goals are not the same as mine. And I am sure that, I don't know how many children you have, but you know that your children are all different. And for the love of God, you're going to want each one of them to go down in their own path. What type of a mother would you be to say, I want each of my kid to make exactly $100,000 every single year, each one of them to have, one blonde wife or husband, I don't know what they are. And just, does it start to look how stupid the whole thing is? Instead, aren't you going to be saying, I want for my kids to be happy. I want for my kids to live happy, healthy, productive lives. I want for my kids to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And so, which means each one of us is unique. And so this idea that the only way you can relate Magatte and Odie together is I'm going to take from Odie to give to Magatte, that's nonsense. And we're humans. You take from Odie, Odie will have resentment. And you give it to Magatte, you're not incentivizing her to do much. Because let's say Odie and Magatte are in high school. right? And we have exams. Odie's partying every single night, never studies, never puts in a piece of work. Magatte is studying every single night, super hard. When time comes for the degree, for the grade, Odie gets a big fat 0 out of 20, and Magatte gets a 20 out of 20. But now you're saying, okay, we want you to be equal. So you take a 10 from Magatte, give it to Odie. Do you really think that Odie tomorrow, the partier, do you think that tomorrow she'll change her habits? Don't you really think she's going to keep on going and partying? Because she knows that no matter what, she'll end up the way Magatte ended up. So Odie's not going to change. She's going to keep on just getting crazy and partying all the time, and who knows? Who cares? But Magatte is going to start to look around and be like, why am I bothering to work so hard? If everything I do, Odie gets a piece. So eventually what might happen is Magatte just stops working herself altogether. Now you have two party animals. Nothing is being produced. They both have 0. Do you think that you have lifted us up or down? But if instead you said, Magatte, great job, so amazing work, and let's see if we can get you to 25 out of 20, right? Because you can always do better, right? Or we can have you do something better. And Odie, let's work with you. Let's see what's going on here. This partying of yours, what's going on? This is not, first of all, we have to address your partying. We have to address all of these issues. We have to address why you're not succeeding.
Yes.
And no, Odie, you're not succeeding because you're not succeeding because you're a woman, Odie. And no, Odie, you're not succeeding because the world around you wants you to collapse. Because even if they wanted that, we know better to know that you still can make it no matter the adversity. Because remember the person who doesn't have mom, who doesn't have dad, who on top of that had all of these illnesses, and the worst happened to them. They were even homeless, and today they're at the helm of this venture capital firm. This is a true story, by the way, one of our friends. On the street. The woman was on the street. She was homeless. Okay, so Odie, I'm here to tell you, but no matter what you think is stopping you, it doesn't have to be this way. This doesn't have to define you. You can always overcome this. And I'm going to work with you. So first, I will spend the time to show you people who have been in worse situations than you think you are.
Yeah.
And how they were able to make it the other way. Because when I'm doing that, I'm trying to remind you of the power, of the resilience that humans have, and you're a human being. And then we will start then, and we'll work together and figure out, where do you want to go yourself? What would you want? And then from there, we can devise a little plan and see out of that plan, what are some of the things that we need to work with you on? Because some of it is going to be on you. Some of it is going to be on, can we build a greater discipline in you, or greater, financial responsibility? How do we develop your sense of accountability? All of these things, we're gonna help you, work on your values and your character. We're going to try to strengthen it, to fortify it, because it's going to be needed for you to go from where you are to where you want to go. And we believe in you. We know you can get there.
Yes.
And then there are other things that are outside of you. And those we treat as well. Because it is true, but in some situations, like in the US, for example, here there is a huge problem with the incarceration, the incarceration issue. We do know it is true, where people say, "How come you have more blacks in the incarceration system?" It's not that necessarily blacks are more criminals than others, but there is stuff going on there, but there's also stuff going on in the fact that there is definitely profiling. So we should not be saying, guys, there's no racism, or there is nothing wrong with apartheid, or there's, we don't have remnants, we don't have, any things that lingering from apartheid. No, we don't say that, and we don't do that. But where I disagree is when we want to put 100% of somebody's, lack of success, 100% put it on apartheid or something else, rather than say, yes, and yes, there are things that probably come from that. And There are others that don't come from that.
Yeah.
Let's
Magatte.
put everything together and we
Mm.
tackle them all. And so we're with Odie, we're working with Odie, figure out what she wants to do, where she's trying to go, and then work with Odie on how she can optimize herself, her individual self. And then we also at the same time tackle any of the environment issues that might be happening. It is true that if somewhere somebody is discriminating against you, we need to deal with it. But usually what you'll find is, and this is why I love the market is amazing because the market knows no skin color. The market knows no gender, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The market knows who is a customer, who has a need and who is capable.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an employer and you see a capable person, I am going to tell you that's how I've seen so many people who eventually one day say, "Oh, I never thought I would hire a Bill," but now you haven't because you need this person. So what I'm trying to say here is we are not when your only solution to a problem is to come and to say to the HDP person, my solution for your situation is that we're just going to give you bunch of props and bunch of crutches and just never hold you accountable for anything.
Mm.
You're not helping that person. Not only you're not helping that person because whether this person gets it consciously or not, this person is getting a message loud and clear that I am not a capable person.
Exactly.
Therefore,
Mm.
Therefore, I need to be given, I need a bigotry of low expectations, basically. That's what you're telling this person. Whether this person gets it consciously or not, it doesn't matter. The message went there. Number two, so you're not helping with that because the minute you rob somebody of their agency, and what you do with bigotry of lower expectation is you're robbing people of their agency.
Yeah.
And I don't know any school of psychology or psychiatry that says it's a good thing to rob people of agency or that or to deny somebody their agency or to not help somebody get in touch with their sense of agency. I don't know any school that says it's a good thing for people to have no sense of agency. None.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when you do something like that, that's what you're doing.
Mm.
That's not helping. And also you are when you're doing something like that, so you're not helping that person for all the reasons that we talked about when we talked about Odie partying every night, Magatte studying every night, and then when the results come, you'll see what it is. So what's happening is these people also, when you do this, you're not really incentivizing them to be the best version of themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
as we said, at the end of the day, the goal in life is for you to be better than the person that you were tomorrow, and certainly not as good as the person you're going to be. I'm sorry, for you to be better than the person that you were yesterday, and probably not as good as the person you're going to be tomorrow. If you're doing it right, it should work that way.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yes.
so here, when you're allowing people not to have any sense of personal responsibility or accountability,
Mm.
as you do with Odie, she parties all night, but when the grades come, you give her half of my grade, then you're not incentivizing Odie to work
Mm.
harder. You're
Mm.
incentivizing her actually to be more sloppy, to be crazier, and to descend more and more into really bad, character and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And the worse your character and the worse your behavior, and probably the worse the trajectory and where you're going to land is going to be. You
That's
see?
right.
So I think this is what we need to remember.
Mm.
So all of these doesn't mean, and so I'm hoping that, and that's really how people should see it. So I am hoping that in South Africa, you have people on all communities, I don't care which skin color people are, it is going to be important to have people who remember and are committed to a culture of excellence.
Mm.
And people refuse the victimhood. I think at the end of the day, victimhood is poison. It is poison. And when you're putting together these rules in place and the merger, I think it's the merger, you call it merger?
Merger
The,
conditions. Mm.
yeah, the merger conditions.
Yes.
You you're basically it's a race to the bottom. Everybody has to understand that's a race to the bottom. Just like Odie and Magatte, Odie parties, Magatte works hard.
Mm.
Eventually, you end up, at least Magatte was being productive and doing things. But eventually, where you end up is Odie has gone crazier. And now Magatte is joining her in being crazy too, because Magatte noticed that it doesn't matter how hard she works, she's still going to end up where she is. So now you have two bads versus
Exactly.
one good. bad. So if your country, if South Africa is not more careful, you're going to end up with equality, all right? You're going to end up with great equality, equality in poverty, misery, and death. That's what you're going to get.
Thanks, Magatte. And it's fascinating. In your book, you say at some point, sometimes it seemed that many believed and still believe, consciously or not, that my people, the people of Africa, are incapable of lifting ourselves out of poverty. Others regard us as pitiful victims who require their highly conspicuous caring and generosity. Very few regard us as capable entrepreneurs who, with the right legal system, would rapidly become prosperous on our own.
Yeah.
And that is quite striking. If one would, if one would take everything into account, how would you frame conditions? If there must be conditions, how would you frame that for prosperity? And what would be, if any, valid excuses for SMEs or HDPs, if any, to which one would have to, or where there would be a value in subsidizing something. So, yeah, moving away from poverty to prosperity, and what can one contribute fairly based on a valid excuse?
Yeah. Yes. So I think for me, ultimately, at the end of the day, if we want, and I think we went through it before, poverty is solved by prosperity, not poverty alleviation. So poverty is solved by prosperity. Prosperity is built by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need a friendly business environment. They need critical threshold of economic freedom. That's the term. So at the end of the day, what's needed here is very much an environment, a better environment where people are free to enterprise. And when you're imposing all of these merger conditions, every single merger condition is one chain and it's one roadblock that you're putting on the terrain. You're going away from economic freedom. And the more you go away from economic freedom, the more everybody will end up badly and poor. So in this case, what needs to be done is for people to work against their for some, if you don't understand, if you didn't learn to connect the dots early, Econ 101, Economics 101, then some of it might sound counterintuitive, right? But you have to trust the evidence. And just put the right condition in place. So right now, many people are tempted to intervene. So what's going on with these merger conditions? There's interventions. The state, the government, whoever, any people who want to see these people thrive, they're creating interventions. Every intervention, every condition is a roadblock. It's a roadblock that's not only going to hurt the HGP people, but it's also going to hurt the others who right now people are saying they're the ones who get to have everything. Well, soon no one is going to have nothing. So in this case, what I would really recommend is that if there is maybe, what I would recommend ultimately is that people in South Africa become dead serious about economic freedom and start on removing rules and regulations. If it's too hard to do at the national level, which I know it's almost impossible, then that's why we promote the creation of special economic zones, next generation special economic zones, like a whole new level of special economic zones in which you have superb governance. Like it's like the Rolls Royce of governances, like very straight, lean, straightforward. You level the playing field for everybody and let people come and let the best win. So that's what I would recommend in this case. Now, when you talk to me about what are some of us, is there any way to help that would be justified? Or to subsidize. I don't know if I would call it subsidy, but I would go back and focus on promoting I think it would be so called for to spend money on helping people develop what I call virtue character,
Hmm.
while you're also providing them with what do you call it, with the environment.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was you when I was saying this to Odie.
Mm-hmm.
If you want anything alive to thrive, anything alive to thrive, whether as an individual or
Mm-hmm.
as a community, and usually those two are linked. A community is made of individuals. Individuals, we're social creatures. We cannot survive on our own.
Mm-hmm.
We're made to be with others, right? So that's the ratio between us. We're a healthy community is made of healthy individuals. You cannot favor one at the expense of the other. They're both equally important.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, if you want any something that's alive or a group of alive people to thrive, it needs two things. For Odie to thrive, Magatte to thrive, my husband to thrive, a tomato plant. Like, remember I said anything alive. If you want anything that lives to thrive, to flourish, it needs two things. Two things. It needs for the seed from which it starts to be optimized as much as possible. And it needs to be put into a fertile ground within a friendly environment, within an environment that's going to be conducive to its growth. If you want a tomato plant and you're going to go and plant it in the in a rocky soil, where it's there is no water ever, the sun is hitting all the time, the type of super hot whatever, your tomato plant, I'm not saying you're not gonna see a tomato, but even if you see a tomato, it might be like a little raggedy little tomato looking very weak and very bad. And there you go. But if you put that tomato plant way in the best soil with all the elements it needs and the right type of sun exposure,
Mm-hmm.
not too windy, whatever, now you come and you have these big juicy tomatoes that are beautiful, healthy, full of nutrients, and maybe you even have many more tomatoes, not just that little one fighting in there. So we're the same. We're the same, except the seed in our case is what I call virtue and character. What are we made of? Do we have what it takes to really make it in this world? Do we have the tools for resilience? Because we know it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care that you were born to the richest parents in the
Yeah.
world or to the poorest. You will be tried in this life.
Oh, yes.
We just have different just different. You see and hear of wealth of people, kids from wealthy people committing suicides all the time,
Mm-hmm.
having cancer all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
We all are suffering. Everybody's got a story. Everybody. So the way we make it to the other side is we build resilience. That's the seed. That seed has to be of quality. It doesn't mean that, oh, I was born crippled. So no, you may be born with something missing, whatever, and still we can help, we can help you with that, like, make up for what you don't have, develop more what you have. It's all possible. We're all valid. Each one of us is valid. Even if you came to this world with no limbs, still, buddy, you can make it, you can build the best life that you can. You just have to believe that, and we'll work together. So my point is, so on the seed, what I call the seed here, it's about virtue and character. Can we help you develop these tools of resilience? And then, in addition to that, we have to make sure you have a proper environment. So for me, when we say, is there anything that can be done? Yes, but we have to work on that, especially on the virtue and character side. And we obviously in South Africa, I'm being told that South Africa is one. It has a very bad business environment as well. Better than many African nations, but still pretty bad in the grand scheme of things.
Oh,
So
yes.
there's a lot of work to do in those two fronts, and I don't mind that if that's where you spend your money, helping people develop that resilience,
Yeah.
helping people get out of a victimhood mentality.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you're setting them up for success. Then, even if the environment is harder than it should be, they will still find a way to make it to the other side. And guess what, Odie, also? They'll be happier people. I
I hear
just
you.
know that we are happier when we have agency. No one, I have yet to see a happy person living in victimhood. No matter how much you throw at that person, no matter how much you give this person, I have yet to see somebody living in victimhood, being a happy person. Even if he's like, well, I don't care, I get all of these freebies. No, look down. This person is not happy.
I hear you.
We did not come to this world. Are there 1% psychopaths among us? Yeah. People who just want to steal from others and all. Yeah. But the rest of us, I would like to argue, are good, decent people. There is, in all of us, there is somewhere, even if it's not very apparent, there's somewhere in there hiding a good person who only wants to be to be a contribution to society. I think we are our happiest when we get to contribute. And you see that so early on in us as human beings. Children love to help. They're in that kitchen and they want to get their fingers messy in there. They want to help you. They want to do things. They want to carry water along with you. They want to do all of these things. It's just our nature. We want to matter. We want to know that our existence makes a little bit of difference. And when people live in victimhood, they can't do that. And so I think there's a lot to do here. I just feel like we're not looking in the right place. But the evidence is overwhelming. It's all around us. And once people agree that economic freedom along that a human being needs, to have to be able to develop her resilience through virtue and character development, and that this person also needs to be put into the right soil and it has to be nutritious, it has to be very fertile. Then if those two are provided, step back and watch this person have the best run of their lives. And that's pretty what it is. That's how I see it. So there are room, obviously, for helping people. I would never hesitate financing programs that work and help people become more, develop virtue and, for more virtue and character development and all of those things. Never. I think that is never wasted money.
Yes.
I don't care if it's given or if it's earned. It's always a good thing to do.
It's fascinating that you emphasize that part of the equation so much, because if you have mastered that, then there's no barrier at all. My mentor often says money is a lazy solution, and for that he means that make a plan. And the thing is that once you have made that plan and it worked, there's nothing that comes to that feeling of joy and satisfaction, and that grows on itself. One really becomes self-empowered, to call it that. Magatte, thank you so much for the wonderful, wonderful discussion tonight, and for sharing your thoughts and your insight, and for letting us into your life, and showing us what can be done, and for emphasizing the important things when it gets to making a success of your life, and to be a little bit circumspect about assistance that work against virtue and character, because that is my worry. Is the issue regarding being patronizing. We are telling people you are not up to this, so we are going to help you. That's always been bothering me about this. That's not empowerment at the end of the day.
No, I believe that you're clipping people's wings. You're clipping their wings.
Exactly.
You're clipping their wings, and I think it's a very immoral. It's a very it's not only dangerous, but it's also it's very immoral. So I would like to think, and the good news here is hopefully there are people in South Africa in some pockets, and I certainly know many South Africans, Black South Africans who I know are definitely pulling their weight, and may they succeed in convincing the rest of the community that it is possible. And hopefully also we give voices to them as well, because I think they tend to be role models for others. It's just when you have a media, when the media, mainstream media, is in cahoot together with academia, in cahoot together with the movie industry, all of these big influencers who get to decide how we think about our societies and problems and how we solve it, when they're all in cahoot together in terms of really having the wrong diagnosis and peddling the wrong solutions, it's really hard. And then, I mean, it's not easy. Virtue and character development is not easy. We tend to resist it. So you see what I'm saying? So when somebody's coming and telling you, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, it's all the other people, you see, you almost want to believe it. It's easier to hear that than to hear, hey, there might be some issues around us, but you've got plenty to work on yourself.
Exactly.
And if you start working on that yourself, if you start working on the things that you need to work on yourself, I promise you, you're going to see improvement already in your life.
Oh, yes.
So how about we start with that for now, and while we deal with everything else, but you got some homework to do right now.
Exactly.
Most people don't hear that.
That's right. And the worst thing is one thinks, one tend to think you have virtue and character until you really start thinking. And then there are levels and levels of self discovery and being honest and more honest and brutally honest with yourself. And then you start to realize, wait a minute, I could have done things differently. And I could have done. Those are the critical areas to go into and to leave yourself in.
Exactly. And the beauty, Odie, is that once you learn how to do that, and it's really not that hard. It's hard at first, but it's really not that hard. And once you know how to do that, then it just becomes a habit.
Exactly.
And then you really have no more time complaining of, thinking about others, whatever, because instead of thinking about maybe complaining about this, you're thinking about, okay, what can I do right now to make things better? Like right now. Like I do it even sometimes myself, even though I say it becomes a habit, but even I sometimes, okay, I just heard something that I'm not happy about, or like some bad news or whatever. And then you tend to want to be maybe even discouraged. Well, the best thing to do in those moments is to remember, okay, this just happened. That's not good. I'm unhappy about it. It's going to set me back, whatever. But listen, a minute before I had that phone call, I had a million things to do. How about I go back to it? And by the time you start working on that, all of a sudden this other thing, it starts to be, and so that's what we need to remember to do.
Absolutely. Oh my God, it's been such a pleasure. I wish I could give you a big hug.
Likewise. Thank you.
It was lovely to speak to you, and I hope we can do so again very soon.
Yes, I would love that.
Thank you for speaking to us. It was lovely, and all the best. Have a good evening. And it sounds as if I must go and party.
Exactly. Yeah.
if I listen between the lines, if I took the message of today's discussion.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Thank you very much, Magatte.
Bye,
Bye, Magatte.